So you applied for a job and you're preparing for interviews. You got called by a recruiter. You're excited. Now you're extremely nervous. You have fear in your heart. Don't fear. So I'm going to help you today and show you how you can prepare for your next interview using AI. Yes, AI. We live in a very interesting time in history. This is a time in history where you really don't need somebody to sit by your side and interview you day and night to make sure that you're ready for your next job opportunity. You can literally take the job, paste it on ChatGPT, and then ask ChatGPT to interview you based on that job. However, I'm going to make it simple right now. I'm going to use ChatGPT, and I'm going to ask ChatGPT to ask me interview questions, to listen to my answers, and also to give me feedback based off my answers. I'm going to go ahead and launch the app, and I'm going to go ahead and start ChatGPT. So, I have the paid version of ChatGPT, but it really doesn't matter. The free version is also going to do the same job. Hi, ChatGPT. I'm preparing for an interview. I would like you to ask me interview questions on cybersecurity, on Linux, on networking, and listen to my answers. And after you listen to my answers, give me feedback on those answers and tell me how I could have improved my answers.
Absolutely. Let's get started. Here's your first question. How would you secure a Docker container in a production environment?
In a production environment, I would secure a Docker container by limiting root access to on the container. I would ask it to limit root access to the infrastructure itself. I don't want it to have root access. Let's say if I was using a VM, I was deploying them on worker nodes that are virtual machine, I would make sure that it doesn't have root access to the Docker machines. Also, I would make sure I really streamline the container and take out all packages that I don't need to be running on that container. And also make sure there are no ports that are open on that container that are not really required.
Good answer. Limiting root access, minimizing the container image by removing unnecessary packages, and ensuring only essential ports are open are crucial steps. To improve, you might add enabling seccomp and AppArmor or SE Linux profiles for additional isolation, and regularly scanning for vulnerabilities in your container images. Ready for another question?
Yes.
Great. Here's the next one. Can you describe what a zero-day vulnerability is and how an organization should respond to one?
Zero-day vulnerability, it's a vulnerability that doesn't really have a patch. The vendor is aware about it, but there is no remediation or there is no patch for that vulnerability. And I think the best way an organization can prepare to handle zero-day vulnerabilities will be to sometimes we can decide to put that device, the vulnerable device, in a different subnet and give access to it through a jump box, kind of like segmentation, so that people don't have direct access to that device. The other thing we have to do is to do continuous monitoring on that device. And then also we can decide to enable two-factor authentication on the device, just to make sure that only the authorized people are able to authenticate to that device. The other thing we can do also is also reach out to the vendor, right? Continuous communication with the vendor to make sure that we are informed as soon as the patch is available. But however, I will put in those few controls, like putting on a completely different subnet, increasing monitoring on it, maybe giving access to that device only via a jump box, and limiting the access or the number of people who have access to the device. That would be how I will react to a zero-day vulnerability.
Solid response. You've covered essential strategies like network segmentation, continuous monitoring, two-factor authentication, and maintaining communication with the vendor. Another key point is to ensure your incident response plan is up to date and that your team is trained to act quickly. Also, applying virtual patching through a web application firewall, WAF, can help mitigate risks while awaiting a vendor patch. Ready for the next question?
Yes.
Awesome. Here's another one. How would you implement network segmentation to improve security in an enterprise environment?
Well, the way I will implement network segmentation to improve security would be, let's say, for example, if I have a public-facing application, or let's say a public-facing web server, I will go ahead and deploy that in a DMZ. And if I was using something like a Cisco ASA firewall, of course, I'll make sure that from a very high risky location like the DMZ into a very high secure environment like a LAN, a local area network, traffic should not be allowed. However, traffic should be allowed from very secure networks into less secure networks like a DMZ. That'll be one of the first things I will do to implement network segmentation. The other thing that I will do is if I was working like on a 3-tier application, I would create different subnets for the different tiers. So let's say we have a WordPress website. I could put WordPress on a different subnet, and then the database on a completely different subnet. And on the database where we have all our data, on that tier, I would go ahead and configure security groups to allow only traffic from the web tier to reach that database. So those are some things I've literally put different subnets to segregate my infrastructure.
Good strategy. Placing public-facing servers in a DMZ and controlling traffic flow between network segments using firewalls are key practices. Defining clear security group rules for different tiers adds another layer of security. To enhance your answer, mention the importance of regularly updating access control lists and monitoring network traffic for any anomalies. Anything else you'd like to add, or another question?
The next question.
All right. How would you handle the security of sensitive data in transit over an untrusted network?
Well, talking about data in transit over on secure network, for example, an unsecure network would be something like the internet. One thing I would strongly recommend or apply would be a VPN. Let's say I could set up a site-to-site VPN where for us to communicate over the internet, we have a VPN tunnel across the internet. The second thing I would do is if it was like a web server to client communication, I will take advantage of public key infrastructure where I could install SSL on my web servers from a good certificate authority. And this SSL should be able to encrypt the traffic with the traffic through the unsecure network. This will be something I would make use of SSL. And in some cases, MTLS.
Great answer. Using a VPN for secure communication over untrusted networks and implementing SSL with a proper certificate authority for encrypting web traffic are fundamental steps. Mentioning MTLS, mutual TLS, is excellent for scenarios requiring client authentication. Additionally, mentioning secure protocols like HTTPS and ensuring strong encryption standards are used would further strengthen your response. Ready for another question?
Yes, one last question.
All right, last one. How would you go about implementing a least privilege model in a corporate network?
Well, for a corporate network, let's say if I were using something, let's say if I was in the cloud, there is a service I could use like Microsoft Entra ID, where we have a privileged identity management. And I will take advantage of role-based access control, where I will give people permissions to do certain tasks within that infrastructure based on their job roles. And that would actually help me to manage the issue of least privilege. Now, let's go back on premises. Let's say people were working on a Linux server. I could literally use the etc sudo file to go ahead and give specific commands that and permissions that a specific user can run, and sometimes based on their role, or not just giving everybody sudo access in the case of a Linux server. And I will also be as much granular to giving permissions based on applications. Maybe some people don't need access to a specific applications. I won't let them have access to that application. But I will use privileged identity management if I were working on Azure, and I would also use maybe basic things like sudo files to control access to system resources.
Excellent approach. Using role-based access control with Azure Active Directory and privileged identity management is a strong cloud strategy. On premises, leveraging sudo for granular permissions is a best practice. For further refinement, you could mention regularly auditing access rights to ensure they are great. For further refinement, you could mention regularly auditing access rights to ensure they align with current job roles and responsibilities. Periodic reviews help maintain a strict least privilege posture. Anything else on this, or are you all set?
I'm all set. Thank you so much for taking the time to interview me today. So that was a very good interview with ChatGPT. I enjoyed the interview. And you can, let's say if you're interviewing for Windows engineering, or maybe you're a CPA accountant, you're interviewing for an accounting position. Believe me, you would use the same, and you can use this tool to really interview. You can ask it to ask for 1,000 interview questions. There is no limit. And because you keep talking to this tool and you keep expressing yourself, your words become better. For someone who is non-technical, you can become better at explaining yourself because you have this to correct you and give you a recommendation on how to speak. Sometimes I don't remember all my points, but you see it's like, hey, Stans, you could have said this, you could have said this better, you could have added these points to that. And so I just want to thank you guys for watching this video. I hope you use this tool for your advantage. The next thing we are going to do with ChatGPT is we would definitely just go online. We're going to look for a job online. And as soon as we find the job, we're going to copy the job description of that job and post it on ChatGPT and ask ChatGPT to interview us based on what it says on that job description. So I'll go ahead and share my screen in a second. I'm going to look for a job on linkedin.com. I will paste it on ChatGPT and I will ask ChatGPT to interview me based on that job description. That's the last thing we're going to do. So let's go to my dashboard. This is a job here, cybersecurity engineer cloud from GM Financials in Dallas, Texas. I'm just going to copy everything from here. I will copy everything and I will paste in ChatGPT. Okay, so I'll copy this and GPT. Now I'll paste that. Now hit enter. ChatGPT is going to try to give me a summary based off this job description. And the next thing I'm going to ask ChatGPT, I'll just stop the summary. I don't need to know it, but I just wanted to ask me interview questions based on the job description. So I'll go back to my phone again, and I'm going to request ChatGPT to start the interview. So back to my phone, I would go to that particular job description, cybersecurity role, and I'm going to launch ChatGPT. Hi, ChatGPT. Hi, ChatGPT. I just posted this job for you, the cloud security job. Can you interview me based on that job?
Absolutely. I'll be glad to help with a mock interview for a cloud security architect position. Let's get started. Question 1. Can you tell me about your experience with designing and implementing secure cloud architectures?
I have designed several secure cloud architectures. Working for a managed service provider, and for most of my clients, the approach will be to discuss with them and also start all the way from the networking of the architecture to understand how many subnets we're going to need. Also, maybe IP address allocations to make sure that we assign the required number of IP addresses or the required range so that we don't have a bottleneck as we continue to grow, right? We design that based also on growth. The other thing that I will do is also focus on the issue of security in depth, where I would try to implement security protocols on just every layer of our architecture, from the subnets to the storage, to databases, to connections between VNets or connections between on-premises and the cloud. And I will put all of those in consideration. Also, when we're talking about authentication, we need an authentication solution, identity provider. So we'll make decisions about those also. For the most recent project I worked on, I was using Microsoft Entra ID as my identity provider. And also the other things we'll talk about, integrating authentication on premises to the cloud, and other parts of the architecture would involve credential management. How do we manage credentials? Where in the case where we can have Azure vaults to manage our keys, secrets, and certificates. And those are some of the things that I will consider when designing a security architecture.
That's a fantastic response. You covered critical aspects like subnetting, IP address allocation, and security in depth. I particularly liked how you emphasized integrating skills at every layer, from networking to storage to authentication. Also, mentioning the use of Azure AD and Azure Vault for identity management shows a comprehensive understanding. Nicely done. Shall we move to the next question?
Well, thank you. That was it. I will still ask you more questions as we proceed, but I will bring in more questions and ask you from different jobs. Thank you so much. In the next video, I'm going to teach you how you can have like a living resume, a resume that's not just static and you apply for jobs and nobody calls you back. So I would show you. It's a very, very interesting video. Please like and subscribe to my channel. That's the only thing I'm going to ask you to do. If you don't like and subscribe, I'm going to ask you to give me an offering, okay? So please like and subscribe. Thank you. See you in the next video. Bye.